go to Derek in the Midwest. Derek, how you doing tonight?
Not too bad. How are you doing?
I'm hanging in there. What's up?
Well, let's see here. It was either today or yesterday. Jones had Charlie Skelton from the London Guardian on, who supposedly went through this major awakening at Bilderberg last year. Do you remember that?
Yeah, Charlie Skelton. He wrote. I remember his name looks familiar. Didn't he write an article just recently on Bilderberg? I don't know exactly what he did last year, but I remember seeing his name associated with one of the Bilderberg articles that was out there.
They sent him again this year, and now he's like a regular, as far as Bilderberg goes, when that comes around, I'm sure he's going to be one of these regular guys that Jones goes to for info, just like he has Jim Mars on for Bilderberg, almost every year.
Or Tucker, Jim Tucker?
Jim Tucker, sorry. Jim Tucker, that would be correct. But it's kind of weird if you actually follow, the way that Skelton went about this whole story thing. It just kind of feels like a setup. If you read the whole thing from last year, I didn't read all of it last year when it happened, but I went through it this year, it was just kind of, odd. Like the first story he writes, it's like a 6 or 8 story series. The first one, he's like joking about the whole thing, like there's no possible way that, the conspiracy theory of Bilderberg could be true. Like, yeah, they probably exist, but I'm sure they don't have a hand in running the world. And he cracks all these sarcastic jokes about, how, like one thing he says is something to the effect of, I bet Henry Kissinger has his own sun lounger flown in by helicopter guarded by the CIA. Like, he just all this nonsense like that. But by the end of the series, he ends up writing with a completely different perspective on the entire thing. And that's, one big thing that I think probably helped put, Jones in the mainstream as far as audience-wise over in Britain, because he had this guy on last year, I think on at least one, if not multiple days. So you know that there's a connection for overseas for him. That's making him bigger. He's on Russia Today. He's been on Fox. If I remember correctly, he's either been on ABC or CBS, one of the two. But I think you're right about him being the next Rush Limbaugh, and I think that the other day when I was on, I said something about Bermas, and I think I might have actually been wrong or slightly off when I said that Bermas might not take Jones's spot. I think I just kind of missed something. Basically, I think what we might be looking at is different people can serve different purposes and more than one purpose. And now that they're pushing Jones and the truther kind of information more into the mainstream, I think that Bermas probably, will just continue to be his understudy and will take his, spot once he's no longer doing it. But like you said, he's going to be the next Limbaugh, so he's going to be less on the fringe and more, being pushed into the mainstream. Catherine Bleisch, on the other hand, is, doesn't look like she's going anywhere mainstream. She looks like she's, Miss Grassroots, underground activist, if you look back at Jones, I mean, like, how did all of his films start? Like, he was actually doing footwork, trying to interview people and, doing all that kind of stuff.
Right.
He doesn't really do what he, did in those films anymore. So I think that they might have Bermas take Jones's spot, yes, but it'll be more in the mainstream, and that also explains why now, they've brought somebody like Bermas on while he's still younger to, market to that demographic, because Jones is, I mean, let's face it, Jones has looked like he was 55 since he was 25, for Christ's sake.
Well, I tell you what, if I can jump in here real quick. Yeah, I mean, Alex, the guy looks like he's a lot older than he is, and he's really not that much older than I am. He's like a few years older than I am, and the guy looks like he's 50-something. I mean, he just looks like he's had it. The thing about Bermas is interesting because Bermas was actually on Russia Today also. I don't know if you saw that clip, but they actually had him on to talk about his documentary film. I'm not sure he's been on separate occasions besides that. But Bermas has been on Russia Today, so I think your analysis is pretty spot on. And the stuff with Bilderberg is very intriguing because you saw how the Drudge Report linked to all these Bilderberg articles. All of a sudden, a few years ago, nothing. Now all of a sudden you have the British press talking about it and all the big papers. You have Drudge linking to it. So there's definitely a shift going on. Plus, they're linking to all sorts of InfoWars articles. Jones said on a show today that I guess Michael Savage plugged him. So they're definitely moving this guy into the mainstream, and they're doing it very quickly. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, I completely agree. There's definitely something going on with that. I mean, like you said, years ago, there was no chance that you would see an InfoWars or a Prison Planet article on any of those sites, even Drudge or anything like that. It was, considered to be way too extreme and on the fringe, and grouped in with things like, you couldn't mention things like Alex Jones without somebody mentioning shape-shifting reptilians or something just absolutely absurd.
Right.
That's how it was. But now, yeah, I mean, they're definitely doing, some sort of push and changing things up. And you do see a lot of these people coming up. I don't know if they know who they're going to put in that position yet themselves. Maybe, those things are still on the line depending on who gets followed the most or, who makes the biggest name. But, I mean, I'm sure they probably have more than one person, that they're looking at, and plans can change at the drop of a hat. But, I mean, yeah, Jones he's starting to, there are so many things, like, people are starting to expose Jones left and right now. I mean, like, a couple of years ago, there were like one or two people out there that were doing exposés on Alex Jones. But I mean, over the past year or two, especially, people have been coming out of the woodwork and waking up to his whole brand of garbage and what he's really about. And the only other thing that I think is noteworthy of mentioning with on the topic of him is that some of these people are coming out and they're speaking out against Jones, but they're doing it in a way that I think is questionable, and I'm wondering if this is just another mode of containment of information for the elite. If you look at how, and I don't know, I haven't tried to talk about or interview him personally, but I know he used to host on GCN, which is a red flag, and then you look at a couple other incidents surrounding him and that are questionable. I know he's still on air, and I know he refuses to talk about certain things, and I don't know if he knows that you just can't talk about it, or you won't have a show that you can make money on, or what the deal is. But if you remember Wing TV from a year or two back, they reported supposedly Jack Blood said to either one of them or somebody that they had contact with that he would sell out if the money was right. Like, that he actually said those words, that he would sell out if the right money was there. Some fact, which is real weird. And that could just be trying to stir up nonsense, or it could be accurate. But he's somebody who recently did an expose on Jones, and he talked about everything he could other than the real deep down dirt material. He talked about everything except for the stuff that you and Reeves and a few other people talk about within the community that do research about his connections with the CNP and the Vatican players, the Knights of Malta, all those pricks. And that none of this was mentioned by him. He talked about everything else and defamed him as best he could without bringing up any real information that was damning in a verifiable sense. Like, oh, okay, he's got this connection, that connection, this connection, ex-CIA, Knights of Malta, CNP, the list goes on. But none of this was sure he could have been, he used to host Jones's show. I mean, he was the number 2 on GC. For how long? He has to have some of this information.
Well, I tell you what, and we're having to get the break right now, but I 100% agree with what you're saying about how there are people who are going out there and they are putting out information about Jones, saying that he's this and he's that, and some of it is just complete BS. I mean, they have all this information about how Jones is connected to the Zionists and the Jews and all this other stuff. I see a lot of that coming from Rents.com, to be quite honest with you, some art sites. And I certainly don't agree with that, and I have some questions about how that is being played out. But I want to talk about some more on their side. So we'll hold Derek from Midwest over, and we'll finish up the conversation. We'll be right back, folks. Stay with us. Derek from Midwest on the line, and we're talking about, I guess you could say, controlled opposition to Alex Jones. Okay, now this might sound extremely conspiratorial to the average listener out there, but you gotta hear me out on this, because this is really key. I firmly believe that what they have done is that they have purposely put out people to put out all sorts of BS information criticizing Jones and claiming that they're exposing Jones with very little credible information behind it. And they do this intentionally so that real information, like the Council for National Policy stuff, the intelligence apparatus, all these people they had on a show that have links back to the intelligence apparatus and all these different groups, the Jesuit order. They do this so this information isn't put out and highlighted, even though this is the most verifiable information that we have that exposes this man as being an operative for the world order system. I mean, this man continues to have these people who have links back to the Council for National Policy on his show, and he doesn't really seem very enthusiastic about talking about this group at all. And the few times that I've heard him talk about it, he sounds like he's about ready to crap a big load in his pants. So